Something extraordinary just happened that should send shockwaves through Washington, and it involves a federal judge doing something so rare, so unprecedented, that legal experts are calling it a turning point in American political history, because a sitting federal judge just transmitted evidence directly to Congress. Evidence that, according to the judge's own assessment, points to impeachable offenses committed by Donald Trump. This is not a partisan political move. This is not Democrats manufacturing charges. This is a federal judge, someone appointed to be neutral, someone whose entire career depends on objectivity, looking at evidence compiled by prosecutors and concluding that Congress needs to see this immediately because what it reveals meets the constitutional standard for high crimes and misdemeanors. Let me walk you through what just happened, why it matters, and why Trump is reportedly in absolute panic mode right now. On January 10, 2026, a federal judge overseeing one of Trump's ongoing legal battles made a decision that doesn't happen every day. The judge reviewed evidence that prosecutors had compiled, evidence related to abuse of power, obstruction of justice, violation of court orders, and incitement. And after examining everything, the judge reached a stunning conclusion. This evidence is so serious that Congress must see it immediately. So the judge ordered that a complete evidence package be transmitted to the House Judiciary Committee, not just random documents, but a comprehensive compilation that included witness testimonies, documentary evidence, and most importantly, a judicial assessment explaining why this evidence meets the constitutional threshold for impeachment. Think about what that means. A federal judge is essentially telling Congress that based on the evidence presented in this case, there are grounds to remove a sitting president from office. Judges don't do this lightly. They don't send evidence to Congress unless they believe the situation is extraordinary, unless they believe that what they're seeing rises to the level of constitutional crisis. This wasn't a recommendation. This was a referral backed by judicial authority stating that the evidence supports impeachment under the Constitution's standard of high crimes and misdemeanors. The evidence package focused on several disturbing areas of Trump's conduct. First, there was abuse of presidential power for personal gain, with clear documentation showing Trump leveraged his position to benefit his businesses, retaliate against political opponents, and reward political allies, all of which directly violates the oath he took to faithfully execute the duties of president. Then there was obstruction of justice, with evidence showing Trump interfered in ongoing investigations, instructed staff members to hide evidence, intimidated witnesses, and destroyed documents, behavior that directly conflicts with his constitutional obligations as president. Next was violation of court orders, showing Trump repeatedly ignored lawful judicial directives, refused to comply with subpoenas, and failed to provide documents that courts had ordered him to produce, demonstrating a complete disregard for the rule of law. And finally, there was evidence related to incitement connected to January 6th and Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. When Trump found out about this evidence transmission, his reaction was reportedly explosive. According to sources close to him, he was furious and terrified, calling his advisors late into the night demanding to know how this could happen and desperately asking whether he could somehow block the evidence from reaching Congress. His lawyers had to explain to him the uncomfortable truth. Once a federal judge refers evidence to Congress, there is absolutely nothing he can do to stop it. The evidence was now in congressional hands, and if Democrats wanted to use it for impeachment, they had every legal right to do so. Trump reportedly started yelling, blaming his lawyers for not preventing this, threatening to fire people left and right. His advisors tried to calm him down by pointing out that the immediate threat was limited because Republicans still controlled the House. As long as they maintained their majority, they could block any impeachment efforts. But Trump wasn't reassured at all because he understood something his advisors were trying to downplay. The Republican majority had shrunk dramatically through deaths and resignations. Their margin was now down to just a handful of votes. And with midterm elections approaching in November 2026, early polling showed Democrats leading, which meant if they won the House, they would have subpoena power, investigative authority, and most importantly, the ability to impeach. And now they would have something even more powerful, a federal judge's assessment that the evidence supports impeachment, not just a political opinion, but a judicial finding that carries enormous weight because judges are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to make decisions based on law and evidence, not politics. So when a federal judge says the evidence meets constitutional standards for impeachment, that is not something that can be easily dismissed as partisan witch hunting. It validates the entire impeachment process and makes it much harder to portray it as purely political theater. But here's where things get even more devastating for Trump This evidence transmission happened at the exact same time his Justice Department was suffering humiliating failures in their attempts to prosecute his perceived enemies, specifically New York Attorney General Letitia James. Let me explain why this matters, because the contrast is absolutely stunning. While a federal judge was sending evidence of Trump's crimes to Congress, Trump's own Justice Department was failing spectacularly to manufacture charges against the woman who successfully prosecuted him for fraud. The Trump administration tried 3 separate times to indict Letitia James. 3 times they brought cases before grand juries. 3 times those grand juries rejected the charges. Think about how unprecedented that is. Federal prosecutors almost never fail to secure indictments because grand jury proceedings are heavily stacked in the prosecution's favor, yet Trump's hand-picked prosecutors failed not once, not twice, but 3 times. The first attempt failed when Trump's appointed U.S. attorney in Virginia refused to bring the case and was forced out. The second attempt failed when a career prosecutor who had been working the case said there was no evidence and she was fired. The third attempt failed when Trump installed his personal attorney with no criminal law experience whatsoever for the sole purpose of carrying out this revenge prosecution, and a federal judge threw out the indictment ruling that she was illegally appointed. Then, last week, a grand jury of ordinary citizens who aren't beholden to anyone rejected the attempt to bring charges, and if that wasn't enough in what has to be the most unprecedented action, Trump's Justice Department tried again 7 days later in a different city with a different set of grand jurors, and they failed again. That is absolutely unprecedented. It shows that even when Trump controls the Justice Department, even when he installs loyalists, even when he fires career prosecutors who won't do his bidding, the system still has some guardrails left. Grand juries made up of regular citizens looked at the evidence Trump's prosecutors presented and said, no, this doesn't pass muster. This is politically motivated garbage. Now contrast that with what happened on January 10th when real evidence compiled by real prosecutors was reviewed by a real judge and found to meet the constitutional standard for impeachment. The difference couldn't be more stark. Trump can't manufacture credible cases against his enemies because the evidence doesn't exist, but the evidence against Trump himself is so overwhelming that a federal judge felt compelled to send it directly to Congress. This creates an official record that Trump committed impeachable offenses. A federal judge reviewed the evidence and concluded it meets constitutional standards. That's not just political opinion, that's a judicial finding. And while the judge can't force Congress to act, the assessment carries enormous weight because it comes from someone who is supposed to be neutral. When a judge says the evidence supports impeachment that is significant, it means that even people who are trying to be objective and fair see Trump's conduct as seriously impeachable. Not Democrats looking for technicalities, but a federal judge, after reviewing mountains of evidence, concluded that it meets the constitutional standard for removing a president. The evidence is now part of the permanent congressional record. Even if the current Republican House does nothing with it, that documentation exists for future Congresses to access and build upon. If Democrats win the House in November 2026, they're not starting from scratch. They can point to the judge's findings, which essentially confirm there were grounds for impeachment, allowing them to draft articles and hold votes much more quickly. The timeline for impeachment has been dramatically compressed. What might have taken months of investigation can now happen in weeks, because the foundational evidence is already compiled and validated by a judge. This also sends a powerful message to other judges and prosecutors that Trump's actions are serious enough to warrant extraordinary measures. When one federal judge takes the step of transmitting evidence to Congress, other judges are watching. They may be encouraged to refer their own cases or impose stricter sanctions for Trump's misconduct. The transmission of evidence signals that the judicial branch is growing impatient with Trump, and that impatience could translate into harsher treatment across the board, including more contempt findings, more asset seizures, and more willingness to hold Trump accountable. For Democrats, this evidence provides powerful talking points heading into the midterms. They can campaign on the fact that a federal judge found evidence of Trump committing impeachable offenses. They can tell voters that if they retake the House majority, they will hold Trump accountable based on findings from a neutral judge, not partisan accusations. They can turn the midterms into a referendum on whether Trump should remain in office, which could motivate voters who might otherwise stay home. Trump's visible panic about the evidence transmission actually undermines his claims of innocence, because if he truly believed he did nothing wrong, he wouldn't be terrified of evidence reaching Congress. He would welcome the opportunity to have everything examined, confident that scrutiny would vindicate him. But his panic suggests he knows the evidence is damning. He knows it likely confirms his guilt, and he knows that once Congress and the public see it, his defenses will crumble. That fear is visible in his public statements and behavior, and it makes even his supporters question whether he's really innocent, because innocent people don't panic when evidence is being reviewed. Guilty people do. The timing of this evidence transmission on January 10th was significant. It came right after the January 6th anniversary, shortly after body cam footage was released following Trump's courtroom meltdowns, and just as Democrats were preparing their midterm campaigns, the timing maximized political impact, keeping Trump's scandals in the headlines, providing Democrats with fresh material for campaign messaging, and maintaining momentum for accountability. The judge may have chosen this timing deliberately, wanting to ensure the evidence was available before midterm campaigns heated up, so voters would have time to learn about it, understand it, and make informed decisions. Here's the bottom line. A federal judge just did something extraordinary by transmitting evidence directly to Congress with an assessment that it meets constitutional standards for impeachment. At the exact same time, Trump's Justice Department is failing spectacularly to prosecute his enemies. Despite controlling the entire federal law enforcement apparatus, the contrast couldn't be clearer. Real evidence against Trump is so overwhelming that judges are taking unprecedented steps to ensure accountability, while manufactured cases against Trump's enemies are collapsing because the evidence doesn't exist. This evidence transmission marks a turning point. It's the moment when judicial accountability converged with congressional authority, creating a path toward impeachment that Trump cannot block. He can delay, he can attack, he can claim persecution, but he cannot stop the evidence from existing, and he cannot prevent Congress from using it if Democrats win the House in November. The walls are closing in, and Trump knows it. His panic is proof that he understands the significance of what just happened. A federal judge just handed Congress the roadmap for his impeachment, and there's absolutely nothing he can do to stop it.